We're going to start working with our equipment now. And we're going to start with the band that's set up in the door or the whatever. And I've got the handles on my band. I slipped the rigid part down so that I can work more with the loop, putting my hand in it like this rather than holding the loop. Hopefully that is clear. So I just let it slide this way. And I'm going to start laying down on my back with uh, where I'm perpendicular to the loop. And I'm holding one end in my close hand just to keep it still. I'm putting my outside hand in the loop and pushing it out so that my arm is right over my shoulder and I've got some tension. So from here, I'm thinking about kind of squeezing my armpit closed a little bit. I'm pressing out, and then I'm going to protract, reaching my fingers up, and then let my shoulder blades slide back down. So what we're trying to do here is turn on our serratus anterior. So that's that muscle that is connecting on the sides of our ribs. It attaches our scapula to our rib cage and controls protraction. So here when I'm pushing out, I'm just helping to turn it on a little bit. And then as I protract, hopefully you're feeling all the muscles on the sides of your ribs working rather than muscles at the top of your shoulder and neck. And if you're feeling it more at the top of your shoulder and neck, I want you to think about actively trying to close your armpit while you're pushing up. But the tension of the band helps us find it just a little bit more. So we're going up and down, just trying to feel that slide and feel those muscles pull the scapula forward. So protraction, sliding the scapula towards the outside of your body. So we'll do a few more. Try not to let your arm get pulled across your body by the tension. You can always scooch closer to the door if you feel like you're fighting too hard to keep your arm over your shoulder. Or you can let yourself have more tension with that arm that's stabilizing the band, or sorry, less tension. And then we're going to switch and do the other side. So you can just roll over, bring that arm out. Think about your ribs here. Ribs have a tendency to want to pop out when we're moving the shoulder blade. So try to keep the fronts of your ribs settled down. And then we're sliding up and down. And you might notice that one side wants to slide and one side doesn't want to slide. And that side that doesn't want to slide just means you need to, spend some time working on finding a little more movement and range of motion through your scapula. You can think about if somebody was holding your pinky finger and pulling your arm up, that sometimes can help you like key into it just a little bit more deeply and make sure that neck isn't clenching or the front of your chest isn't working here. Do just a couple more. All right, and then you can release the bands. And we're going to grab one of our loops. So we're going to do serratus wall slides. If you've done these before, then, grab whatever loop you know is going to work for you. Either the extra light or the light. The light is going to be hard. So if you haven't done these, maybe start with the extra light. And then you have options for where it's going to go. It can go around your elbows. and that will be slightly easier. When we do this, and I'll get up to the wall and show you, but I'll show you here first. When we do this, we're going to be sliding our arms up the wall, but we're going to be trying to keep our elbows and hands in the same line. Now you do have the option, if you're feeling the motion up here in your neck, you can take your arms wide in a V. That is a regression. But what we absolutely do not want to see is this. So if your hands are coming together, then don't go so high, or like really think about pushing your arms out. If you think about keeping your hands slightly wider than your elbows the whole time, that should help. Now, if I have the band on my wrists, now I have to be actively pressing into the band to keep my hands apart, right? So hopefully that makes sense, how having it around your wrists is going to be harder than having it around your elbows, and how the level of resistance is going to make this harder. So I'm just going to tilt my camera a little bit so you can see the wall. There we go. All right, and we're going to stand about 12 inches away from the wall. I have my hands shoulder width apart and the band around my wrists or elbows. And I'm thinking about pressing the edges of my hands into the wall. My ribs are in. This is important. I'm thinking about my rib cage pulling down towards my hip bones, pressing the edges of my hands into the wall. And as I start to slide up, I'm thinking about reaching my elbows forward until I get hopefully all the way up to straight. And I have to move the band because something's in the way. So I'm trying to get all the way up to straight elbows. Think about reaching my elbows forward the whole way, keeping tension out of that spot in my neck. And then when I'm ready to slide back down, I'm thinking about reaching my elbows forward to the wall to initiate the slide. So what we want to feel while we're doing this is our armpits and the sides of our ribs working. So you could think about pushing your hands up from under your arm, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it often makes sense to people when they think about it. And then again, when we're coming down, that sense of reaching your elbows forward should be the thing to initiate the movement. So we're going to do some more of these. Think about those ribs resisting, so ribs are reaching in the opposite direction that the hands are. And again, you can experiment if you need to have your hands going slightly wider into a V. You're going to want to do that if you have less range of motion in your shoulders, if you're missing some mobility, or if you have really super overactive upper traps. We should be feeling the scapula go into upward rotation. So as our arms are going up, our shoulder blades are doing this. And as our arms slide back down, they're doing this. So that's what we're really trying to feel. The other thing to pay attention to is where your elbows are pointing. So the tips of your elbows should always be pointing forward at the wall. If you're doing a good job of keeping your hands and elbows and shoulders in a line, that should happen pretty automatically. But you can always think about it to help kind of like really dig into the position. And that is encouraging external rotation of the humerus. And we need external rotation of the humerus when our arms are overhead. And it's also helping with the upward rotation of the scapula. The scapula does not rotate as well if the humerus is not upwardly rotating. So do a couple more of those till it's feeling I'm going to take my elbows out to shoulder height. My hands are slightly narrower than my elbows because I want to think about my fingers pointing towards each other. And I have my thumbs up to the ceiling. Thinking about gently lifting up through the belly, reaching out through the legs just so your lower body is in a good position. It's not really going to do anything. From here, we're going to lift our thumbs up, allowing our elbows to stay on the ground. So we're pivoting. So try that just with the hands a couple times. And then I want you to notice how when you lift your hands up, it makes your shoulder blades want to slide down your back. So without pinching them together, we're going to think about reaching the shoulder blades down while we lift the hands up and back down. And hopefully we're feeling activation between the shoulder blades and near the lower parts of the shoulder blades. That's what we want to feel rather than feeling it around the neck. So do a couple more in this position. And then you're going to slide your hands up higher so your elbows come higher than your shoulder. Fingertips are much closer to each other. They can even touch. And you're going to do the same thing here, thinking about that slide through the shoulder blades, opening up the hands.
Pretty sure I've had this session with Emily.
Yes. So if that's feeling good, you can try the next harder version of it, which would be lifting the hands and then allowing the lift of the hands to pull your elbows off the ground. But again, we want to feel this in the middle of the back, and if it's going up here, then you can either try to adjust for it by sliding the shoulder blades down more and allowing the elbows to lift by your hands opening. So like your hands are trying to keep opening, and that's what pulls the elbows up. If you're still feeling it in the neck, just stick with your elbows on the ground. And then I'll give you one more variation, which might be aspirational today. So the hardest way to do this is going to be with your arms open in a Y. And if you're doing it with your arms open in a Y, you're thinking about shoulder blades sliding down and then thumbs pulling up to the ceiling. So whatever variation feels good, that's the one you want to use. But again, the focus should be all here, right in the middle of the back, because we're trying to target the mid and low traps, and that's where they are. So do a couple more at whatever level feels good for you. And then we'll come all the way out of that. We're going to roll over onto our sides and grab a small pillow or towel or something that you can squeeze right in your arm. And if you have a weight or something, no more than 3 pounds, or a water bottle, or you can just use your lacrosse ball or your tennis ball to hold onto, because squeezing it will help increase muscle activation. So you have a bunch of options here. Whatever works. It does not need to be heavy. And if you can do this with more than 3 pounds, you're doing it wrong. We're going to lay down on our sides. We're going to squeeze that thing. And you're thinking about squeezing your elbow in. The goal is that you don't want your elbow lower than your shoulder. So you see here, because I have a very curvy waist, when my arm is just on my side, my elbow is narrower than my shoulder is. Here, my elbow is in line. And if you have something thicker where your elbow is slightly higher, that's fine. Don't worry about it. We're going to squeeze, we're going to hold whatever it is that we're holding. And we want our elbow in a straight line. Think about slightly retracting your shoulder blade. So it's not a big retraction. You're not pulling it all the way back. You're just thinking about finding a little bit of connection between your shoulder blade and your spine. You're going to grip your thing, keep that elbow squeezed in, and you're going to lift it up, only moving as far as you can keep your scapula still. So you can take your bottom hand and kind of gently hold the head of your humerus here. And what we want to feel is that bone turning without it shifting forward and back. So it's just twisting in place into external rotation. This one tends to go from easy to hard in like one repetition. So you'll be doing this and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is fine. I can totally do this. And then you'll go to the next repetition. You'll be like, oh my God, I can't lift my arm. Like that fast. But generally the place that you want to be feeling it is right in the front of your shoulder and or on your scapula. We're going to do just a couple more of these because they're really hard and I'm burning like fire. Whew. And then we'll switch sides. This is another one where it's pretty normal to feel large discrepancies from side to side, depending on, how side dominant you are. So if you go to your opposite side and go like, oh, I can do way more here, or like I can barely do this at all on this side, super typical. So find that connection in your scapula, elbows squeezing in. Keep squeezing the elbow as you lift the hand up. Keep that scapula nice and still. You can always hold your shoulder if you need a little monitoring. Oh yeah, now we're starting to get the burn. And if you're doing these regularly, you should be going for sets of like 10 to 15. But I, of course, am not counting. I'm going to do 3 more. Whew. All right. So that is a pretty standard, like traditional PT set of exercises for shoulder health for an aerialist. So if you do nothing else but that on a semi-regular basis, you're doing okay. We're going to move on to some slightly more interesting things. We're going to start with an exercise that I call opera gloves, just because when I learned this in a Pilates class, that's what the instructor called it. We're going to take a band, so either your yellow band or your green band, and it's going to go on your elbows. Imagine that you're wearing opera gloves. And you want your elbows to be at about shoulder height. Palms are facing you. And I'm going to go down. My shoulders are tired. I'm doing my light band. So here, I'm going to open my arms and close them. So that is the basics of the exercise. Now, you're thinking about some stuff that's going to make this a lot more challenging. So, as I open my arms, I am also going to be thinking about protracting my scapula. So again, protraction is scapula sliding apart. So this is the opposite direction from what they want to do intuitively. I'm trying to press my shoulder blades wide and resist that desire to protract. As my arms come back together, I'm going to try to retract, which is then again resisting the direction that they want to go. So arms open, think about protraction. Arms come together, think about retraction. So what's really happening here is that your shoulder blades shouldn't be moving at all, but we're trying to find those muscles, how they work in opposition to keep them still. Yeah? Pay attention to what's happening in your chest as well, right? Think about the space between your shoulders here and your shoulders here staying the same amount and staying even the whole time. And that focus on what's happening in your shoulder blades should help. But think about your chest lifting up through your arms while your arms are coming back together to avoid you kind of rounding forward into it. And we'll just do a few more because these are hard and we're already getting pretty exhausted with all of these muscles. Let's do one more. All right. So now we're going to stand up and we're going to go back to our band in the door. And we want to raise it up a little higher. So I'm going to move it till it is, sternum-ish height. I'm going to keep working with holding the loop rather than holding the handle. But it is not so bad to hold the handle for this exercise. I just prefer to hold the loop. So we're going to do some port bras. So here I'm holding the loop with my hand kind of right in front of my heart. My elbow is out to the side and lower than my shoulder. My ribs are in. I'm going to start by pulling my elbow out to get in line with my body, and then my arm follows. And then when I come back, I'm leaving my elbow where it is while it bends, and then letting my arm come back in front of my heart. Now, while you do these, I want you to think about that same thing with your scapula that we were just working on, right? So as I'm pulling my elbow out to the side, I shouldn't be pulling my scapula back to do it. My scapula should stay pretty stable. Elbow goes out, and then especially as the hand goes out, we don't want to let it slide back in and collapse. We're trying to keep it broad. and in. Pay attention to the ribs. Stand on stable feet. We're going to do one more like this. And then we're going to take it overhead. So I'm going to keep my arm in this same frame. And I'm going to lift it up. And then do the same movement. Elbow, hand, and then it's going to come back in front of my heart. Lift it up. Elbow, hand, back in front. Let's do two more here. Really think about those ribs staying still and how your arm moves around them. And then we'll turn around and do the other side. Sorry, you cannot see me while I do this. So, hand in front of the heart, shoulder is relaxed down away from the ear, ribs are in. Reach with the elbow first and pull the hand wide. So you should really be thinking about reaching all the way to the wall with your arm. And then leave the elbow reaching towards the wall as your hand comes back. Scapula stays broad on the back. Shouldn't be feeling any neck tension here. Let's do two more and then we'll take it overhead. So now hand comes up, making a frame, elbow and hand pull it out and back in front of the heart. Keep the ribs in as your arm lifts. Keep reaching long through the back as your arm opens. Let's do two more. All right. So now, got just a couple more things left. We're going to stand facing the anchor point. We're going to take our hands into the loops. And I've got kind of the pinky edge of my hand in the back of the loop. And we're going to start here just pressing our arms down by our sides. I'm thinking about reaching out through my fingertips. My arms don't need to go behind my midline. They can go just to my midline, and that's fine. Then I'm going to take my hands a little higher. As I start taking my hands higher, I'm pressing the backs of my hands back. And then I'm going to take them higher. Now I'm at shoulder height. And then I'm going to start taking them above shoulder height. And now my thumbs are pressing back. And then we'll do one more height, kind of as high as you can go. If they don't go all the way in line with your body, that's fine. And we're going to start going back down, letting the hands move as we go. And we're going to do one more time up and down, just one pulse in each position. So by the hips, a little bit open, shoulder height, slightly above shoulders, as high as you can get while still maintaining a good position, and reverse it. Then we're going to press our hands into the band and we're going to move our arms up and out, trying to find that same range. Pressing back the whole way. And your hands might not stay at your midline, that's fine. Just think about pressing back into it. Trying to keep the shoulder blades connected. We'll do one more. This is hard. Keep the neck out of it. If you're feeling neck, don't go that high. Whew.